Alright, so one of the important topics that we will cover today and we will go through it is this Active Directory. So before I actually start Active Directory, we will look at our lab again. So if you see in our lab, this is our San Francisco office and this is our New York office. And as you can see here, we have something called primary domain controller. So before we start installing this domain controller, let's just learn about it. Active Directory. One of the important concepts you may hear about it is called Active Directory. We call it Active Directory Domain Controller. So simply, who is your boss? Correct? Who is your boss? Your boss is someone who is actually leading you, who is controlling all the employees, making sure they're doing their task, and they're doing their task based on level of authorization they have. Correct? So for example, Kawa is working right now and he got a boss, right? Anytime if Kawa wants to do something, Kawa needs to make sure he has the permission. If he does not have the permission, he is not going to be able to do that, right? That's why there needs to be someone to control. There needs to be someone to manage the team in a company. So when it comes to Active Directory, we are talking about a centralized server. And that centralized server is basically where all the clients are being authenticated. Correct? So let me open Paint. So if I have one computer, two computer, three computer, four computer, five computer, six computer, seven computer. So now if I want to log in to this computer, I need to create a username for me, right? I need to create a username for me here to log in. For example, Umaid1. If Umaid wants to log in to this computer, is Umaid's username going to work here? Is it going to work here on a different computer? How? How is it going to work? It's not going to work because this is different computer and this is different computer. When Umaid creates his account on this computer, it means it is a local user. In order for Umaid to log into this computer, he needs to create another user here, also called Umaid1. Why? Because each computer that you see here, they are what? Called stand alone. Stand alone means they are local. They are what? They are local. And each of them is administrator. This is administrator, this is administrator, there's no boss. There's no one to control them. There's no one to control them. Because all of them have local user account and they are administrator. Correct? If this computer is in San Francisco and this computer is in New York, if Umaid travels from San Francisco to New York, Umaid will not be able to access using his account that he was using here. He needs to create another account here because it's a local system. There it comes, a server. There it comes, a server called Active Directory Domain Controller to fix that problem that we have here. When we have Active Directory Domain Controller, all of these machines are joined. All of these machines are joined to this domain. Now they are no longer local machines. You can use them as local machines, but they are no longer local machine. Once they are joined, we create user accounts here. Umaid user, Kawa's user, Mustafa's user, Zia's user. All of them are created in this centralized server. Now, when Umaid wants to log in here, he can using his Active Directory user. When Umaid wants to log in here, he can using his Active Directory account. He actually don't need to worry. If he goes to San Francisco, he can log in. If he goes to New York, he can log in. Why? Because all of the objects that we have is stored where? In Active Directory server. Once computers are joined, your users are created. Now this Active Directory Domain Controller can actually control these computers. For example, what are those controls? Those are called group policies. You call them group policies. You create policies, and those policies are, for example, Kawa should not be able to change computer time. Zia should be able to change the computer time. Kawa should not be able to go to control panel. Zia should be able to go to control panel. Those are different policies that you can set. Enam should not be able to log in after 5 p.m. After 5 p.m., if Enam tries to log in to one of these machines, he should not be able to. Alright? So all objects have their own attributes such as name, last name. So when you create user account or computer account or groups in Active Directory, they are called objects. You call them objects. And then all of them have their own name, first name, last name, and so on. Every time when you log in, you can see who logged in, who logged off, who was not able to log in, and so on. You can also use certificates in the Active Directory, and that basically encrypts information. So those are all different things. In Active Directory, one of the important things are the structure. You have to understand the structure, correct? You have to understand the structure. For example, we have domain. Most of the time you will hear a word domain, correct? Domain. You will hear a word tree. You will hear a word forest. You will hear a word organizational unit. Before we do the installation, we need to understand these concepts. As you can see here, groups of objects such as users, computers, accounts, printers, or other devices, and they share the same AD database, one domain where all objects are stored. So domain is basically a system where all objects are stored. Domain is a system where all objects are stored. For example, your username, your computer account, the groups, the printer accounts, all of them are stored in one place, and that is where your domain is. Correct? And then we have trees. More than one domain. When we have more than one domain connected together, when we have more than one domain connected together, they are called what? Trees. For example, let me give you an example. For example, San Francisco.local, New York.local. San Francisco.local is one domain, New York.local is another domain. So when you connect them together, right, they are like what? More than one domain connected to each other through trust relationship. So then they can share data with each other. That is called trees. وزارت دفاع ببینه، وزارت دفاع میتونست که یوزرهای وزارت داخله را ببینه. اینمی از یک تا دومین یا نه اضافه تر شد. وقتی که اضافه تر شد اونمو یک تراست ریلیشنشپ در بینشان بود. اونمو را چی میگن؟ اونمو را تری میگن. تری، درخت. به خاطر که از یک دومین زیادتر شد. صحیح؟ So here you can see an example. I have a domain called abc.com, xyz.com, and then they have what? Trust relationship. And then you can see I have account.abc.com, sales.abc.com, payment.xyz.com, and then hr.xyz.com. So they are what? They are like a tree. So that is why they are called domain tree. They are called what? They are called domain tree because they're like a tree. They are connected to each other. Their multiple domains are connected to each other through a trust relationship. That is why they're called what? They're called domain trees. Trees. Because they're like trees. Correct? And then we have forest. Forest. Group of multiple trees is called forest. When we have group of multiple trees, they are called forest. And forest contains application information, shared catalog, and domain configuration. All your domain configuration, all your application information is stored in a forest. For the first time, when you create a domain, you're creating a forest. So as you can see in this example, we have domain forest. So this is domain forest, and then these are what? These are domain trees. Correct? So when multiple domain trees come together, they become what? They become domain tree. And then we have organizational units. Organizational units are like a folder. Organizational units are like a folder in Active Directory where you can store your objects, where you can store your files. That's it. And then we have global catalog. You will hear this word a lot. Global catalog. Global catalog actually is a domain controller that stores copy of all the objects in the domain. All your objects are actually stored in a domain controller where we have global catalog. Without global catalog, you cannot have a domain controller. Without global catalog, you cannot have a domain controller. For the first time, when you install a domain controller, you need a global catalog because all of your users attributes, all of your users properties are stored in the global catalog. Global catalog is important. Without global catalog, you cannot install Active Directory.